Leaders, real life leaders.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode, and I'm so excited. I have Alan Lomax, and he is here, and we are going to be talking about real estate investing reimagined. If you want to recession-proof your nest egg with hands-off passive income, then you are going to be in for a treat today. We're going to be talking about how you can reduce your tax liability, how you can build a hedge against inflation, and diversify your investment portfolio. And we're going to also talk about some personal development as well. So, Alan, welcome.
Well, Chantel, thank you so much for having me today. Delighted to be with you, and I really do appreciate this opportunity to be with you and to be with your audience today.
So we've all heard that real estate is a great investment, but some people might not be sure where to start. And a lot of people might have had a bad thing with rentals as far as like residential single family homes. And so I've heard a lot of people say, I've done some single family rentals, and it's just every time I turn around, this tenant's moving out, or I need an $8,000 HVAC unit, or $1,000 for a new refrigerator. And it's just every month something new, and it's more of a headache than it's worth. So I want you to talk about how you've kind of twisted things where you say, okay, how can we reimagine real estate investing where it's a little bit more passive and it's not as much of the daily grind of someone calling you up saying, I need a new refrigerator, I need a new HVAC, all of those things?
Well, I can certainly relate to all of that as I have been there and done that myself. And it took me a while to get to this point where I really started developing these opportunities to work with passive investors, hands-off investors who can maintain their professional lives and follow really the work of their calling at the same time that they are developing passive streams of income. So just a little bit about me and how I got started. I started really as an accidental investor. I didn't intend initially to really become a real estate investor. I was working at the University of Guam, and I wanted a place here in the States to be able to come back to when I had a chance to be in the States. And so I purchased a piece of property in Durango, Colorado, which is where I had moved from to Guam, and I built a home, and I built it intentionally with what some people refer to as a mother-in-law apartment. So I had the main property to rent out, and then I had the mother-in-law suite to come back to when I had a chance to be here in the States. That is, unbeknownst to me, that's what has become known as house hacking, which is taking a portion of a house and living in a part of it and renting out a portion of it. Well, that worked out really well, and even after I returned to the States, rather than moving back to Colorado, I ended up living in South Texas. And I wanted any and every excuse I could to get out of South Texas and get up to Colorado. And so I still continued to use that mother-in-law apartment for a number of years while I was living in South Texas. In about 2003, I relocated to North Carolina, where I currently live now in Appalachia. And when I moved here, I intentionally purchased a home that was much larger than I needed, with the intention of house hacking again, because it was working out quite well with my Colorado property. And so I bought a large home and divided it into a triplex and lived in a portion of that and rented out 2 units, and that was working out well. And so I purchased a third property and did the same with that. And all of that was working out well and great. And I was listening to various different gurus that say, just leverage to the max. And well, that's fine as long as that works until it doesn't. And it can all break pretty quickly. And in 2008, 2007, actually, as the economy was crashing, I also lost my university position. And the economy had crashed at the same time. And so I lost tenants and the job at the same time. And so I essentially ended up losing absolutely everything that I had put together. And rather than looking forward to a very nice retirement, which I had been looking forward to, I suddenly was down to nothing. And I had to start all over again. And putting things back together, I was able to put things back together, and by 2016 had recouped a lot of what I had lost. And once again, I put everything I had into spec home development, and that went belly up as well. And so once again, I was starting all over again. At this point in time, I realized that I needed a lot more education, and I needed to be associated with people who knew exactly what they were doing. And so I joined a mastermind, started networking, started a podcast, and developed a really extensive network, and learned about passive investing, and so began developing passive investment opportunities for others as well. So I think it's not particularly unusual that we learn through our biggest and worst mistakes, and the darkest times in our lives can really end up being the light that finally eventually shines through and shows through. So,
well, I want to say one line that I've seen that you've said, and I love that you said that there's a downside to being hyper involved in your real estate investments, that there's the tenants, toilets, and trash equate to trouble, toil, and turmoil. And those 6 T's are taking away from the energy that you could be putting into the passion of your calling. And so, for example, if you've got, let's say you're an attorney and you are, getting a whole bunch of tenant rentals, and you're trying to manage those yourself. And, someone's calling you, the tenants are in trouble, the toilets, and all the stuff that's going on. Now you're taking away your dollar productive activity of something that's your passion. And now you're putting it into this, like, that could be a living nightmare. And then you just almost can get to a place where you just want to wipe your hands and go, forget it, I'm not going to do it anymore. And instead, you're like, have created a path for people where you can say, okay, listen, if you want a passive way to do multifamily, this is a way that you can give money towards a multifamily estate, but yet you're not the one dealing with all the nightmares. So explain it in as simple terms as you can of how people can get involved in that.
it may sound very complicated at first, but it actually is very easy. And at stevetucker.com, my company, we make it very easy. And all a person has to do is to agree to invest in the properties. So there are really 2 players in each and every property that we bring to our investors. There's the active investors, and then there are the passive investors. The active investors are the team that I'm part of. We do the acquisition. We find the properties that are out there. We do the underwriting. The underwriting is looking at all the numbers and making sure that the numbers work together. in order to bring the kinds of returns that we want to bring to ourselves and to our investors. We do all of that due diligence. We inspect the properties. We have professional inspectors inspecting every aspect of the property, from the electrical, the HVAC, the plumbing, the roofing, and every single aspect of that. We're doing all of that. We then negotiate the purchase prices on that. We, once going under contract, we complete that due diligence process, and we put the management in place to oversee the properties. And then we do all of that asset management throughout the entire process of that. The passive investor, all that they have to do is to put up the money for that. And by putting up their funds for that, what they get is the return on that investment. And the return on investment is the passive investors are almost always in a preferred position. That means that before the active investors get a penny out of that, the preferred investors get their returns on.
And is there a minimum amount that you tell people that they will get back on their investment? And what is the minimum amount that a passive investor could put in? And what is the minimum amount that an active investor could put in?
It varies from project to project, but generally speaking, the minimum investment is about $50,000. And of course, they can put in a maximum amount they want to fund that particular property. In return for that, what they're going to get, generally speaking, the preferred return on investment is a cash-on-cash return distributed on a quarterly basis throughout the holding period of that property, is generally a minimum of 8%. And then the final distributions that we have been generating really through the last 10 properties that we have gone full cycle on, the investors have received a return on their investment of an annual return of about 30% on that. So the cash on cash is preferred of about 8%, and then the overall return on the investment once the capital is returned has been about 30% on an average of that. So that doubles the person's money within a time period of about anywhere from 3 to 5 years has generally been the hold periods on.
So as far as the different projects, do someone, when they decide, let's just say they want to do a minimum investment of $50,000, are they putting it into a specific project, like say 123 B Street, or are they putting it into a pool that's buying multiple properties?
The way that we work is investing directly into property ABC and so the investor knows exactly which property their money is going into. They know the address, the location, they know how many units that property has. They know the makeup of the units. They know in whether it's an A, B, or C class property. They know absolutely everything about that, and we share with them the underwriting that we have done, totally and completely transparent. Now you ask about a pool. There are investors out there who form investor pools, and then the investors don't really know which property their money is necessarily going into. But the way that we work is directly with properties.
And so one of the things that is really important is people having kind of a peace of mind that, their money, it's hard to trust a process if you're unfamiliar with, if someone's brand new to this. What do you kind of do to help people have a peace of mind where they understand like, okay, I am going to get an ROI. I am going to be able to get passive income. What are some different things you put in place to give people that peace of mind?
Well, reputation is absolutely critical for peace of mind, and we have a stellar reputation, and we certainly share that reputation with our investors. We also, investors often and generally speaking, if they're new to us, they want to know of other investors, and so we have referrals that we can provide them with. And we are totally and completely transparent from the beginning to the end. We always initiate each project or each capital raise with a webinar that centers specifically on that property, and we take them through the underwriting process. We make available to them all of the critical documents, the private placement agreements, the operating agreement, and of course the subscription agreements. So they have all of these documents to review and to look over with their financial advisors and attorneys before they even make a decision as to whether or not they want to invest with us and in that particular property. So it's reputation and transparency are the best ways that we can provide peace of mind, and peace of mind is absolutely critical, and we want all of our investors to have peace of mind. We want them to sleep well at night.
Yeah. And one of the things I saw on your website is that you talk about Investopedia. They had 3 simple steps on how to acquire wealth. And they said, the real estate investing professionals, number 1, they make more money than they spend. They avoid debt. And number 3, they invest their savings wisely. And it's not just how much you make that matters, but how much you keep. And so I think for people to really think about this idea of if they really can, put their money in, and this is really passive income, and they're not dealing with the day-to-day, the toilet's broken, this is not working, all of that, they'll be able to invest more, and they'll be able to do it for longer. Because at some point you really do get to a snapping point where you're like, don't call me and tell me, this is broken, that's another headache. People want to simplify and get rid of the headaches. So tell listeners where they can find you, where they can follow you, and where they can find out more information about your company.
Well, the best place to go is to steedtucker.com/webinar. And Steed Tucker is Steed like the horse and Tucker like we're doing now. So that is steedtucker.com/webinar. And there you will find it's about a 20-minute webinar. It is Real Estate Reimagined. And in that webinar, you will just have the basics on how to dramatically enhance your financial well-being by substantially reducing your tax liabilities, building a hedge against inflation, and recession-proofing your passive streams of income. So it's worth 20 minutes of your time to find out how to do all of those things. And of course, at my website, steedtucker.com, there is educational material there. Some of that you have referred to. And there is also opportunities to schedule a time to talk with us. And we always love talking to individuals. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Life Leadership. If you'd like to get the show notes or access more resources, log on to reallifeleaders.com/podcast to get the show notes from this episode and any other resources we might have mentioned. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to review or rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word. And if you have any leadership questions you want answered, email podcast@reallifeleaders.com.